So we're going to go over the dominant tonic chord progressions again today, and I'm going to also teach you again how to resolve those seventh chords. So we're going to work on both of those aspects today. So I'm going to share my screen with you, and I'm just going to kind of take you step by step through this. Let's go ahead and start with just a 5-1 chord progression. And again, I'm going to kind of show you some techniques for how you could do this. Let's choose a major. So you put in your key signature first. Okay, so all you have to do, the first thing is you look at your Roman numerals and put in your bass line. So here, in the key of A, the fifth scale degree, if it helps, maybe you need to write out a major scale. I'm just going to use a key signature for now. I'm going to try and be really thorough today. So here's scale degree 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. When we get to, just so that you guys know, if you get to the A again, we don't call that scale degree 8, we call it scale degree 1. So you go to the fifth scale degree. So that's going to be your 5 chord here. Oops. Thought that was a highlighter. So that's your fifth scale degree. And here is your first scale degree. Those are the 2 scale degrees we are working with, and we're building triads on top of them. So all we do is within the key, we build a triad. And then for the 5 chord, you build another triad. So this tells you pretty clearly that for the 1 chord, you have an A, a C sharp, and an E that you're dealing with. For the 5 chord, you have an E, a G sharp, and a B. So we know that from our doubling rules that we want to double the root. And we know that we're going to write 4-part harmony, right? 4-part harmony. So we need to double one of these notes in each of these chords to get our 4th chord tone. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to place these chords in the order that they're going to appear in our chord progression. So I'll start with the 5 chord. We need an E, a G sharp, and a B. And I'm going to put another E here because I know I want to double the root, especially since it's in root position. So then for the 1 chord, I have an A, a C sharp, and an E. So again, I want to double the root. So now I've got all the chord tones that I'm going to use, and I can mark them off as I put them into the score. So the first thing I want to do is put in my bass line. So I look at my Roman numerals, I've got a 5, and I've got a 1. So I know that I need to put an A in the bass for this first chord. I'm sorry, an E in the bass. And I'm just going to write this to make it extra clear. So I put my E here, and then I look over here, I mark off one of my E's to make sure I know that I've already used that chord tone. So then I'm going to mark off the A. So here, I put an A in the bass. So I've got 2 of my chord tones taken care of. So now I need to put in my leading tone. Remember, the leading tone always has to resolve. And how does it resolve? It resolves up by step. So I'm going to find my leading tone in the key of A. That's a 7th scale degree. So now I have a new scale degree that I've got to worry about, the leading tone. So I see that my 7th scale degree is a G sharp. So it looks like my G sharp is going to be right here. And I know that G sharp has to resolve up by step because it's a leading tone. So I'm going to go ahead and put my G sharp here. And I'm just going to resolve it up by step. And I'm going to mark in the score that the leading tone is resolving up so that I know for certain I've taken care of my leading tone. So the next thing, you'll notice between the 5 and the 1 chord, we have an E and a B left, and a C sharp and an E. So that E is common to both chords, right? You have an E in both chords. So that means I'm going to hold that tone over because it's a common tone. And the common tone is going to help to smooth out the chord progression. So I'm going to knock off both of my E's, and I'm just going to put them in the next voice. You can put them in any voice you want. You can put them in the soprano. Doesn't really matter as long as you have your common tone. And I'm just going to go ahead and write here CT for common tone so that I know that I have my common tone taken care of. The last thing we're going to do is put in our remaining pitches. So I have a B and I have a C sharp. So all I have to do now is put in my B and resolve it to the C sharp. So now I have a complete chord progression, and that's all you have to do. If you're in minor, let me just show you how minor works. So there's no key signature, so all this has been canceled out. Okay, so it's actually the same exact chord progression. E comes down to A. We have a 5 chord here. It has to be a dominant, so it has to be major, and then it comes down to 1. You still have your leading tone that goes up to A. Some of you may have noticed that I haven't done something that I need to do, so we'll get back to that. We still have our common tone that holds over, and you still have your B going up to the C. So the progression's exactly the same. There's just one thing that you have to do in minor that you don't have to do in major. In major, this G, it's already a G sharp. It's already the leading tone. The G in minor is a G natural. So it's not a half step. So we need to raise that G and make it a G sharp so that it has that really strong pull to the tonic. So always make sure to raise your leading tone in minor. So for step 3, hold the common tone. And then step 4 was just resolve remaining voice by step. Okay, so that's all you have to do for a 5-to-1. Now, in order to do 5-7-to-1, we have to add one more pitch. So the 5-7-to-1, we're going to actually do the same exact key. Got a 5-7-to-1. So I look at my scale, and I have to add a 7 to the 5 chord. So now I have E, G sharp, B, and D. So I'm going to write those notes down. I'm actually going to put in my accidental. And then I need my 1 chord again. So I need A, C sharp, and E. So I already have 4 chord tones for the 5-7, and I have 3 for the 1 chord. So for the 1 chord, I know that I at least have to double it. But one of the things that happens with the 5-7 chord is you either have to leave out the 5th on the 5 chord or the 1 chord. It's your choice, but depending on what you do will change what happens with your resolution. So let's just go through both scenarios. You've got 5-7 going to 1. If you leave out the 5th on the 5-7 chord, then that means this chord here is incomplete. You're going to have to double the root. And then for the 1 chord, sorry, I wrote a C, I meant to write an I. So the 5-7 chord's incomplete. The 1 chord will be complete. So you have an A, a C sharp, and an E. So those are all the chord tones you'll use if you make the 5-7 chord incomplete. If you want to make the 1 chord incomplete, then the 1 chord ends up looking a little bit weird because you triple the root. So let's go ahead and go through that as well. So the 5-7 is complete, the 1 chord is incomplete. So that means I'm going to put all 4 chord tones into my 5-7 chord. And then for my 1 chord, I'm actually going to triple the root, and I'm going to put in a C sharp. So this is something that you just kind of have to memorize. When moving from 5-7 to 1, one of the chords has to be incomplete. And this is how it works out depending on which chord tone you choose. So let's go ahead and do a 5-7 to 1 in A major. So we're going to do this one first, the 5-7 to 1, incomplete to complete. So I still want my bass line in there. So I'm going to go ahead and put my E here in the bass. So that's my 5-7. And I'm going to put my A right here. So that's my 1. And I'm going to mark these tones off so I don't get confused. Get rid of my E, get rid of my A. Okay? So I still need to resolve the leading tone. So my leading tone I already know is a G sharp. So I'm going to mark off my G sharp. And I know that that resolves up by step to the A. That's your first tendency tone. Your first tendency tone is the leading tone. So I'm going to put it in the exact same spot as with the other chord progression. So I didn't need to mark that sharp. So I have my G sharp, and it just resolves up to A. And I'm going to mark my leading tone to make sure I know I took care of that. So I look to see if I have any common tones. So between these two chords, I have an E and an E. So I'm going to hold that common tone over, because that will be the shortest possible motion for the common tone. So same thing, it looks a lot like the resolution of the 5 to 1 chord. So we have one more tendency tone. This is where it changes for the 5-7. Your 7th has to resolve down. So the 7th of the 5-7 chord. So the 7th of the 5-7 chord is the D. And if you look here, I've got a C sharp. So the D has to come down to that C sharp. So all I do is I put my D here and I just come down to a C sharp. So now I have an incomplete 5-7 chord and a complete 1 chord. That's how you resolve that one. For the second one, I'm going to show you how to do a complete 5-7 and an incomplete 1 chord. It's the same basic process. You're going to follow these steps over here. So here, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to put in my bass line. This time the 5-7 is going to be complete. The 1 chord is going to be incomplete. I'm going to mark off the notes that I used so that I don't use them again. I've got an E that I used, and I've got one of the A's taken care of. So the leading tone still has to resolve. So let's do that next. G sharp still has to come up to A. I'm still going to mark this so that I know I took care of it. Are there any common tones? In this case, we have no common tones. So there's no common tone to resolve. So that one's marked off when you're doing a 5-7 complete to a 1 that's incomplete. So the 7th still has to resolve down. So let's take care of that one next, because that is a tendency tone. We don't have an option. It has to come down to the C sharp. So I'm going to actually put my D here in the alto, and I'm just going to make it come down to this C sharp here. And I'm going to go ahead and mark that. I should have done that on this one too, that my 7th is coming down. So now I look at what I have left, and I have a B in my 5-7 chord, and luckily it can move down to the last A in my 1 chord. So all I do is I put my B here and I resolve down to A. So that's how you do root position. Tomorrow we're going to get into how to do inversions. They're actually a little bit easier, because with inversions you never leave out any chord tones. You include all 4 chord tones.